There comes a moment when you realize that the greatest obstacle standing between you and the life you want is not always a lack of ability. Sometimes it is the inability to remain with one thing long enough to give it your full attention. Your mind moves from one thought to another. One notification appears, and you reach for your phone. One opinion enters your mind, and suddenly you're questioning yourself. One small difficulty appears, and you begin searching for something easier. But understand this: every time you allow your attention to be taken away, you are giving a piece of your power away with it. Focus is not about becoming someone who never gets distracted. It is about becoming someone who notices the distraction and chooses to return. Return to your purpose, return to your breath, return to the work in front of you. Return to the person you are becoming. You do not need to control the entire world around you. You need to develop enough control within yourself that the world cannot constantly pull you in different directions. Because a scattered mind cannot build a powerful life. If your attention is everywhere, your energy is everywhere. And when your energy is everywhere, your progress becomes difficult to see. So today, ask yourself a simple question. Asterisk, what would become possible if I stopped giving my attention to everything that demanded it? You may discover that you already have enough time, enough ability, enough potential. What you have been missing is the discipline to remain focused when something more comfortable, more entertaining, or more immediately rewarding tries to pull you away. The goal is not to escape the world. The goal is to become so grounded within yourself that the noise of the world no longer decides where your mind goes. When you master your attention, you begin to master your actions. When you master your actions, you begin to shape your habits. And when you master your habits, you begin to shape your life. So, for the next few moments, do not look for another distraction. Do not search for another answer. Be here, listen, and begin the practice of becoming a person whose mind is no longer controlled by everything happening around them. Attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess, yet many people give it away without awareness. From the moment you wake up, countless things compete for your focus. Notifications, opinions, worries, memories, and endless streams of information. Without discipline, the mind becomes like a leaf carried by the wind, moving wherever external forces push it. But a life directed by distractions can never create meaningful progress. To build inner strength, you must first learn to train your attention. Many people believe that focus is something a person either has or does not have. But this is not true. Focus is not a gift, it is a skill. Like any skill, it grows through consistent practice. A person who trains their attention every day becomes stronger mentally, just as a person who exercises regularly becomes stronger physically. The mind responds to repetition. Whatever you repeatedly give your attention to becomes more powerful within you. Observe your own thoughts for a moment. How often does your mind leave the present task? Perhaps you begin working and within minutes your thoughts drift toward the past, toward future worries, or towards something more pleasurable. This is the natural tendency of an untrained mind. It seeks novelty, comfort, and stimulation. It moves quickly because it has never been taught to stay still. The practice begins with awareness. You must first notice where your attention goes. Most distractions do not force themselves upon you. They are invited by unconscious habits. Every unnecessary glance at the phone, every moment spent feeding negative thoughts, and every impulse followed without awareness strengthens distraction. At the same time, every moment you return your focus strengthens discipline. Imagine a person learning to lift weights. They do not become strong in one day. Strength develops through repetition. The mind works in exactly the same way. Each time you notice your attention wandering and gently bring it back, you perform a repetition of mental training. It may seem small, but over time, these small moments create extraordinary results. Training attention also requires simplicity. Many people try to do several things at once, believing that multitasking is productive. In reality, a divided mind loses efficiency. True focus requires giving your complete presence to one thing at a time. When you eat, simply eat. When you listen, truly listen. When you work, work with full attention. A person who learns to be fully present discovers a level of clarity that cannot be found in a distracted state. There will be days when the mind resists. It will seek comfort and look for excuses. You may feel restless, impatient, or bored. These moments are not signs of failure. They are part of the training. The ability to remain steady when the mind wants to escape is what develops true mental strength. Every time you resist the urge to chase distractions, you strengthen your capacity to direct your own life. Over time, something remarkable begins to happen. The noise around you loses its power. Distractions still exist, but they no longer control you. Thoughts continue to appear, but they no longer pull you in every direction. Your attention becomes intentional rather than accidental. You begin to choose what deserves your energy and what does not. A focused mind creates deeper work, better decisions, stronger relationships, and greater peace. It allows you to move through life with purpose instead of reacting to every passing impulse. The person who masters attention does not simply become more productive. They become more present, more aware, and more aligned with what truly matters. In a world filled with endless distractions, the ability to direct your attention becomes a rare form of power, and those who cultivate it possess a strength that cannot easily be shaken. Distraction becomes powerful when you continue to feed it. A distraction may begin as something small, a notification, a passing thought, a quick glance at your phone, a conversation that does not matter, or the sudden desire to check what everyone else is doing. The first moment may be harmless, but when you repeatedly give that distraction your attention, you strengthen the habit of leaving what matters. The mind learns from what you repeatedly practice, and if you constantly reward distraction with your attention, your ability to remain focused becomes weaker. The important thing is not to create a life where distractions completely disappear. That is impossible. The world will always contain noise. People will always have opinions. Messages will arrive. Problems will appear. Your mind will produce thoughts you did not ask for. The goal is not to control everything outside of yourself. The goal is to stop allowing everything outside of yourself to control your inner state. Ask yourself how often you interrupt your own progress. You sit down with the intention to accomplish something meaningful, but then you check your phone. You open one message, then another. You watch something for a few minutes and suddenly half an hour has disappeared. You return to your task, but your mind is no longer settled. You have not only lost time, you have lost the rhythm of your attention. This is why distraction can be more dangerous than it appears. It does not always destroy your day in one dramatic moment. Instead, it takes small pieces of your attention again and again. A few minutes here, another few minutes there, until you look back and wonder why you have made so little progress towards something that once mattered deeply to you. You must learn to recognize what deserves your attention and what merely demands it. These are not the same thing. Something can demand your attention without deserving it. A notification demands that you look at it. but it does not mean you need to respond immediately. Someone's opinion may demand an emotional reaction, but it does not mean you need to defend yourself. A negative thought may appear strongly, but it does not mean you must believe it. This is where discipline becomes freedom. When you stop responding automatically, you create space between what happens and what you choose to do. In that space, you regain control. You begin to understand that you do not have to answer every impulse. You do not have to follow every thought. You do not have to chase every opportunity for stimulation. Start with simple things. When you work, remove unnecessary interruptions. When you study, keep your environment simple. When you speak with someone, give them your full attention instead of thinking about the next notification. When you rest, actually rest rather than filling every quiet moment with stimulation. These small choices teach your mind that you are the one directing your attention. There will be moments when distraction feels attractive. Your mind may tell you that checking something quickly will not matter. It may promise that you will return to your task immediately, but every time you recognize that impulse and choose not to follow it, you create another layer of mental discipline. You are not becoming rigid. You are becoming intentional. There is a difference between being controlled by your environment and consciously choosing how you interact with it. A focused person can enjoy entertainment, communicate with others, and take breaks. The difference is that these things are choices rather than automatic escapes. Eventually, you begin to notice that distractions lose their attraction. You become comfortable with silence. You become comfortable with boredom. You become comfortable doing one thing without needing constant stimulation. And when you can remain present without needing something new every few seconds, your mind becomes much more powerful. Protect your attention as carefully as you would protect something valuable because it is valuable. Your attention determines where your energy goes, and where your energy goes determines what grows in your life. Stop feeding what weakens you. Stop giving endless attention to what has no connection to your purpose. Every time you choose your purpose over distraction, you are training yourself to become more focused, more disciplined, and more capable of creating the life you truly want. Your mind will produce thoughts whether you ask it to or not. Some thoughts will be useful, some will be unnecessary, and some will simply appear because of old experiences, fears, expectations, or habits. The mistake is believing that every thought deserves your attention. A thought can enter your mind without becoming your truth. It can appear without becoming your direction. Learning this difference is one of the most important steps toward mastering yourself. Many people spend their lives reacting to whatever happens inside their minds. A negative thought appears, and they become negative. A fearful thought appears, and they become afraid. Someone says something about them, and they immediately begin replaying the words for hours. They do not realize that the thought itself is not always the problem. The problem is the amount of attention they give it. Imagine standing beside a road and watching cars pass. You can see every car, but you do not have to get inside every one of them. Thoughts are similar. They pass through your awareness. Some are worth examining, while others can simply be observed and allowed to move on. The goal is not to fight your thoughts. Fighting every thought creates another form of struggle. Instead, develop the ability to observe without immediately reacting. When you notice a thought that distracts you, pause. Do not immediately follow it. Ask yourself whether this thought is useful right now. Does it help you move forward? Does it require action? Or is it simply repeating an old story? This simple pause can completely change your relationship with your mind. A strong mind is not a mind that never experiences doubt, fear, anger, or uncertainty. A strong mind is one that can experience these things without automatically allowing them to control behavior. You may feel nervous and still continue. You may feel frustrated and still remain calm. You may experience doubt and still take the next step. This is mental strength. Your attention follows what you repeatedly think about. If you spend hours thinking about what others are doing, you have less attention available for your own growth. If you constantly replay mistakes from the past, you have less energy available for the present. If you repeatedly imagine everything that could go wrong, your mind becomes trained to search for danger rather than possibility. This is why you must become selective with your inner dialogue. You do not need to believe every sentence your mind creates. When your mind says, "I cannot do this," you can recognize it as a thought rather than a fact. When it says, "Everyone is judging me," you can question whether that assumption is actually true. When it says, "I need to quit," you can pause and ask whether you are truly finished or simply uncomfortable. The more consciously you question your thoughts, the less power unconscious thinking has over you. You begin to create distance between yourself and the stories your mind tells. That distance gives you freedom. But mastering your thoughts does not mean forcing yourself to think positively every second. Life will contain difficulties. You will experience disappointment. There will be moments when your confidence disappears. The practice is to remain grounded, even when your mind becomes noisy. You acknowledge what is happening without allowing temporary emotions to define permanent decisions. This requires patience. The mind has been practicing its patterns for years. You cannot expect it to become completely quiet overnight. Instead, practice returning. When your mind wanders, return. When fear pulls you away, return. When anger takes over, return. When unnecessary thoughts consume your attention, return to what is in front of you. Every return is a form of training. Eventually, you begin to understand that you are not required to obey every thought. You can choose which thoughts deserve energy and which ones can pass without your involvement. This creates a deeper form of focus because your attention is no longer controlled by every internal impulse. When you master your thoughts, you do not become someone without emotions or challenges. You become someone who can remain steady while those experiences move through you. Your mind becomes a tool rather than a master, and you begin to direct your attention toward what matters, instead of allowing every passing thought to decide where your life goes. Discipline is often misunderstood as something harsh, uncomfortable, or restrictive, but true discipline is much quieter than that. It is the ability to keep moving in the direction you have chosen, even when your emotions are asking you to stop. It does not always look impressive from the outside. There is no audience when you wake up early, put your phone away, continue your work, or choose to stay with something when your mind wants immediate entertainment. Yet these quiet decisions are what create strength. Most people can act when they feel motivated. When energy is high, the goal feels exciting and everything seems possible. Taking action is easy. The real test begins when motivation disappears. You wake up tired. You feel uncertain. The task seems boring. Progress feels slow. At that moment, the mind searches for an escape. It tells you to postpone, relax, check something, or begin tomorrow. Quiet discipline is the ability to hear those thoughts without allowing them to decide your behavior. You do not need to feel ready before taking action. You need to become willing to act despite how you feel. This does not mean ignoring genuine needs for rest or recovery. It means learning the difference between a real limitation and temporary resistance. Sometimes you truly need to rest. Other times, you simply do not want to do the difficult thing. Knowing the difference requires honesty with yourself. Discipline grows through small promises kept consistently. If you decide to spend 30 minutes learning, then give those 30 minutes your attention. If you decide to exercise, follow through. If you decide to reduce unnecessary screen time, honor that decision. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen self-trust. Every time you repeatedly break your own commitments, you teach yourself that your intentions do not need to be taken seriously. This is why quiet discipline begins with small actions. You do not need to transform your entire life in one day. Choose one thing and practice consistency. The purpose is not perfection. The purpose is to build evidence that you can rely on yourself. There will be moments when nobody notices your effort. Nobody will congratulate you for closing the distracting app. Nobody may know that you continued working when you wanted to quit. But the absence of recognition is exactly what makes these moments powerful. You learn to act because the action matters, not because someone is watching. A disciplined person does not constantly negotiate with every feeling. If every action requires a long internal debate, energy is wasted before the work even begins. Create simple structures that reduce unnecessary decisions. Decide when you work. Decide when you rest. Decide what deserves your attention. Then follow those decisions consistently. This creates a sense of inner stability. You no longer need to ask yourself every morning whether you feel like pursuing your goals. Your direction has already been chosen. Feelings can change, but your commitment remains. Quiet discipline also teaches patience. Modern life encourages immediate results, but meaningful transformation rarely happens instantly. A seed does not become a tree because you stare at it every day. It grows through consistent conditions over time. Your skills, character, confidence, and focus work in the same way. You must continue even when the results are not immediately visible. Eventually, discipline becomes less about forcing yourself and more about becoming a person who naturally follows through. The actions that once required great effort become familiar. The distractions that once controlled you become easier to ignore. Your standards become clearer. You begin to understand that freedom does not come from doing whatever you feel in every moment. Real freedom comes from being able to choose your actions instead of being controlled by impulses. Build this strength quietly. Do the work when nobody is watching. Keep your promises when nobody is asking. Stay focused when nobody is encouraging you. Let consistency speak louder than intention. Because when discipline becomes part of who you are, you no longer need to constantly search for motivation. You simply continue walking toward what you have decided is worth becoming. The world will always be full of noise. There will always be opinions, notifications, expectations, conversations, trends, arguments, and countless things competing for your attention. If you try to respond to everything around you, you will eventually lose contact with what is happening within you. This is why becoming unavailable to noise does not mean running away from the world. It means becoming selective about what you allow to enter your mind and influence your direction. A focused person understands that not everything deserves a response. Not every message needs an immediate answer. Not every opinion needs to be challenged. Not every criticism needs to be defended against. Not every opportunity deserves your time. Not every thought deserves your attention. When you begin to understand this, you stop living reactively and start living intentionally. Many people are exhausted, not because they are doing too much meaningful work, but because their attention is constantly being divided. They move from one conversation to another, from one notification to another, from one concern to another. Their body may be in one place, but their mind is somewhere else. They rarely experience complete presence because something is always demanding their attention. The solution is not to eliminate everything. The solution is to create boundaries around your attention. There are moments when silence is more valuable than another opinion. There are moments when stepping away is wiser than explaining yourself. There are moments when closing the door to unnecessary noise allows you to finally hear what your own mind has been trying to tell you. When you become unavailable to noise, you begin to protect your inner environment, just as you would not intentionally fill your home with unnecessary clutter. You should not fill your mind with endless mental clutter. What you repeatedly consume affects how you think. What you repeatedly listen to influences what you believe. What you repeatedly watch shapes what you consider normal. This does not mean becoming afraid of information or isolating yourself from others. It means becoming conscious of what you consume and why. Ask yourself, is this helping me grow? Is this helping me understand? Is this helping me become calmer, wiser, stronger, or more capable? Or am I consuming it simply because I am uncomfortable with silence? Silence can feel uncomfortable at first because it removes the stimulation that keeps the mind occupied. But when you become comfortable with silence, something changes. You begin to hear your own thoughts more clearly. You begin to recognize what truly matters. You discover that many of the things you believed were urgent were simply loud. This is a powerful distinction. Urgency is not always importance. Someone else's reaction may feel urgent, but your peace may be more important. A notification may appear urgent, but your concentration may be more important. The desire to prove yourself may feel urgent, but your long-term growth may be more important. Your life becomes different when you stop allowing noise to determine your priorities. Being unavailable to noise also means becoming comfortable with being misunderstood. You do not need to explain every decision to everyone. You do not need universal approval before moving forward. If you know why you are walking a certain path, you can continue even when others do not understand it. The quieter you become internally, the less you need external validation. You begin to measure yourself by your own standards rather than constantly checking how others respond. This does not make you careless about people. It makes you less dependent on their reactions. Protect your attention. Protect your mornings. Protect your moments of deep work. Protect your ability to sit quietly without reaching for stimulation. Protect the goals that require your concentration. Not because the world is your enemy, but because your attention is precious. You cannot control every sound around you, but you can decide which sounds deserve a place inside you. You cannot stop people from talking, but you can choose whether their words control your emotional state. You cannot prevent every distraction from appearing, but you can refuse to follow every distraction that appears. And when you become selective with your attention, you become selective with your energy. When you become selective with your energy, you become more powerful in your actions. You begin to move with greater clarity, greater calmness, and greater purpose until the noise around you can remain loud without becoming the voice that directs your life.